I am Lori Everhart. I am the Director of Development with the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa. I'm very happy to be here to speak with you all today. I'm actually here in place of my colleague, Terry Gaumer. Terry is our Affiliate Development Director, and she is the one who goes out and works with the majority of the affiliate community foundations we have, including the Cerro Gordo County Community Foundation. She is not available this week, so she asked me a while back if I would come and be here in her place. So I am happy to do that. Not as familiar with Cerro Gordo County and the organizations as Terry is, but I know you guys will help me along through that. But I'm really pleased to be here today to talk with you about the Community Foundation and how we partner with nonprofit organizations to help them focus on their mission and do the good work that they are doing in their organizations. So you have in front of you a packet, and I just want to let you know that there's no need, you don't have to follow along. As I'm going through, I will probably pull things out of here just to show you that, hey, there's a flyer that corresponds with what I'm talking about right now, but it's absolutely not necessary. You can completely leave it closed and just know that the information is there for you later, but it is completely up to you on if you want to follow along there. So the first thing we're going to start with talking about, first thing I have to do is make sure that my head turned on. We'll try again. Hang on 1 second. There we go. Just needed to wake up again. Fell asleep a little bit. So the first thing I want to talk about a little bit is the fact that the Community Foundation really has a regional footprint in this area. We, like so many nonprofits that have a regional footprint, that there are so many now that are serving multiple counties, going across from different communities into different counties. And like that, the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa also works in this regional area that you see up here on this map. We have, we work in 20 counties and we have 23 affiliates. 3 of them are community affiliates, so towns within either those counties or counties outside of our region. But we work with that, really our goal in working with nonprofit organizations is to partner with them and help them be able to achieve their mission and continue to do the good work that those nonprofits do in their area. We have a volunteer base of close to 350 volunteers. Like the governing committee for the Cerro Gordo County Community Foundation, each of these counties has that governing committee that works. They are there to help in the granting process. They are there to help us connect with area nonprofits, to look for needs in their communities and in their counties that we can try to help serve, and just really to be the face of the Community Foundation in those local areas. In this region, we have a variety of funds that we work with as a community foundation. We are a public charity, public 501c3 charity, and we have a variety of funds, some that will be familiar to you, donor-advised funds, things of that nature. Across this region, we have over 900 funds, and about 286 of them are nonprofit funds. So they are funds specifically that benefit nonprofit organizations. So you met the committee members for Cerro Gordo, and just to give you an idea, in your folder there is their 2020 impact report, and it really gives some good information about the work that the Cerro Gordo County Community Foundation has been doing. This is for 2020, so it talks about the amounts of the grants awarded, assets, total amounts granted since 2005, and on the back it has the grant recipients from 2020 and a list of all the funds that are held in Cerro Gordo County. I did look up a little bit today, so I would have a few more current statistics. Actually, the current assets of the Cerro Gordo County Community Foundation as of today are just right around 4.5 million, so that has increased. And this, like I said, is their 2020 grant report on there. In 2021, they also obviously awarded grants, and from what I could find, it was 29 grants at a value of about $98,000 that was awarded out. So they continue to do great work, and we certainly appreciate the time and the efforts of these volunteers to make that happen here in this county. So thank you very much to them. So, because most of you are associated with or work for nonprofit agencies, I certainly don't have to tell you that agencies that rely especially on state and federal funding are continually having to wonder what their funding is going to be. You know, what's going to be appropriated, what's going to be voted on. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to try to do. And so there's not only what's coming in from those government budgets, but also then the fundraising that has to do to make up what needs to come in for those organizations to do their work. So what we do is we establish and manage endowment funds for nonprofits that generate a stream of income for their operations and their programming forever. So the next flyer here talks a little bit about focusing on mission. And that is really what we want to do. By partnering with these organizations, we want to help them be able to focus on their mission and take some of the burden off with the fundraising to help them through these nonprofit funds that we can establish. So let's talk a little bit about endowment and the power of endowment funds. And this just shows, this is based on some assumptions, based on the work that we do. But really, if you take an endowment fund that in year one is established with a $10,000 gift, you can see over time, year 15, year 25, and 50, how by year 15, you turn that over one time over with the grants that have come out and the fund balance has built. Then in 25 years, you've turned it over a second time. 50 years, it's turned over, 6+ times of what has come out from that initial $10,000 investment. And the reason I like this is because this shows what happens if you're not even adding additional gifts to it. This is just if the only thing that ever went in is that initial $10,000, how that turns over, how that grows, and how that continues to provide for the organization that it benefits. Obviously, additional gifts coming in needs larger fund balances, larger grants that are available on a yearly basis. But there are a lot of unique features of endowment funds. First of all, there's long-term stability. The fund is a permanent source of income for the nonprofit. And second of all, they're professionally managed funds. Our investment policy goals are to achieve between a 7% and 8% return over time to provide ongoing distributions and growth for the future. So the growth that happens from there is growth that's happening after the yearly grants are coming out, based on the investment policies that we have and our investment goals for our funds. You have the perpetual continuation of the original intent. So when a fund is established with a community foundation, it is established with an intent. In the case of a nonprofit agency fund, it is to benefit the work and the mission of that nonprofit. Our board of directors have the duty to ensure that the intent of that fund continues into perpetuity. And we do that through what's called its variance power. So if in some case a fund was established for an organization, let's say, that benefits music programs within a certain area, if for some reason the nonprofit that was benefiting no longer ceased to exist, it would be the duty of our board of directors at the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa to make sure that those funds continue to meet that original donor intent. We would continue to find a way to serve the mission or the intent of that fund, whether that had to be through a different organization or finding a different way to do that. So you know that when the fund is established into perpetuity, the intent of that original gift is going to be honored and continue in that area. Another benefit, and we will talk a lot more about this, but I'll touch on it just briefly right now, is the Endow Iowa 25% tax credit. Only permanent endowments that are held at accredited community foundations are eligible for this tax savings. And as I said, we will talk more about that. The other nice thing about endowment funds with the community foundation is it gives you flexible control over the annual distribution. So there's a 4% distribution that is available every year. That's the maximum that comes from the endowment funds, but there is no minimum. So an organization could decide that they just wanted to reinvest from year to year, or they could take less than the 4%. It's completely, that organization has the ability to decide what they want to do with that annual distribution. Also, you have a mission partner in support with the foundation endowment for building that endowment from our team. And there is also a flyer in here that talks about growing a nonprofit endowment fund. And that talks just about some of the ways, and we'll touch on them a little bit more as well, that we partner with the nonprofits to help them grow their funds. So let's talk about a little bit about the basics of an endowment fund as well, how it works. So basically we go on this give, grow, grant model. What happens is the fund is created with an establishing gift. The dollars are invested, The principal is protected. With permanent endowment funds, the principal is not available to come back out. That is permanently put into the fund to create the investment growth that provides the grants over the coming years. Then the grants support the activities of that nonprofit. With the nonprofit funds, one of the nice things is those annual distributions come to your agency unrestricted. They just have to serve the mission of your agency. So you can use them for programming, you can use them for wages, you can use them for whatever supports the mission of your organization. So there's a little bit more flexibility in there, as opposed to sometimes, as you may know, you may get grants or you may get gifts that are restricted to something specific within your agency. These are funds that are just available for you to use to support the mission. And then the fund is also considered a long-term financial tool. So like we talked about, the principal is not available to come out of a permanent endowment fund. It is meant to be something that is going to serve the organization into perpetuity. As long as the organization exists, that fund will be there to serve and to benefit the organization. And there's also, I forgot to pull it out, but there's this Power of Endowment flyer that kind of outlines what we talked about with some of the features of the endowment fund. So let's talk a little bit about usually how it works to get a nonprofit agency fund started. So an organization decides that they want to start a permanent endowment, that they want to start an endowment fund. Usually what happens to begin with is the board or whatever governing body of that organization decides what the startup amount is going to be. Our funds do have a minimum of $10,000 to get started. So that's all this needed is $10,000 to establish the fund. Then at that point, the board works with someone from our office, probably Terry, to set up a fund agreement. And that outlines how the fund works, how the distributions come out, what the responsibilities are for the fund. Then the board provides the initial gift for the fund. Now, what's really important is to remember that sometimes the funds to start an endowment come from the board, come from the organization. Perhaps they are funds that are sitting in a bank account or a CD or something like that that they want to invest. That is one way. A donor can also provide the establishing gift for an endowment fund. So perhaps you have a long-time supporter who's very interested in, your organization creating an endowment fund, having something lasting to go into perpetuity into the future. A donor can certainly provide some or all of the gift to establish a nonprofit endowment fund. Then once the gift is taken in, that is invested. It is invested, we recommend, for 8 quarters. It has to be a minimum of 4 before any distributions can be taken, but we suggest 8. The way we figure that 4% distribution is we do what's called a rolling 8-quarter balance. So every year on September 30th, we take a snapshot, we look at what was the balance of the fund the last 8 quarters, average it out, and take 4% of that. That helps to account for the ups and downs of the investments in the market to help make sure that we're protecting the principal in that fund. So it's invested before the distributions can begin, or like I said, they can be left in for growth. And then the annual distributions are available forever, so they go on. Now, lots of organizations take advantage of our permanent endowment funds as well as another option we have, which are our quasi-endowment funds. So, like the word quasi says, it's kind of an endowment fund. So you're like, well, what's the difference? So with the permanent endowment fund, the principal or gifts, once they are put in the fund, principal and gifts that go in cannot come back out. It is simply the earnings that are available for annual distributions. With a quasi-endowed fund, the gifts come in, they are still invested, so they still realize what has been for us over the past 10 years, an average of almost 8% growth each year, but the principal is available to come back out and can be used. So we will still provide to the organization, hey, if you want to continue to have this grow, you want to protect what's put in, here's the 4% amount that's available for this year that we recommend, but you're not limited to that. More can come out. It's a nice tool for an organization that maybe is trying to build a reserve fund for a piece of equipment, for maintenance that has to be done for a building, a new roof, a capital campaign, something like that. The only requirement as far as a balance is a quasi-endowed fund has to maintain at least $10,000 in it until it's ready to be closed out. So once you're ready to take it all out completely and close the fund, then everything can come out. But other than that, it has to maintain at least the $10,000. Another difference is quasi-endowed funds are not eligible for that Endow Iowa tax credit, which I promise we are. I keep alluding to it and saying we're going to talk more about it. I promise we're going to talk more about it. But they are not eligible for those tax credits. And sometimes what organizations will do is have a strategy of they have permanent endowment and they have quasi-endowment. They'll take the annual distributions out of the permanent endowment and pop it into the quasi funds because then it's accessible to them, but it can go back in and continue to get those investment earnings until they're needed for maybe whatever project or whatever they are planned for in the future. Okay, I promised, and here we are. We're at it. The Endow Iowa tax credit. And I apologize, the flyers got in a little bit backward order, but there is a flyer that talks about Endow Iowa in here. I'm going to pull it out just to refer to it a little bit. So, the Endow Iowa tax credits are a great program that encourage donors to invest in the future of nonprofits in the state of Iowa. So the way that it works is since 2003, the Iowa legislature has set aside a certain amount of dollars each year that are available to be given out in tax credits. For the past, it started in 2003. I'm not sure how long it's been at this level, but I know at least for a while it has been set at $6 million a year. So $6 million a year are available to be given out in tax credits. So the way that works, just for round number's sake, if a donor makes a $10,000 gift to a permanent endowment through an accredited community foundation, they're eligible to receive $2,500 in tax credits that can be used for their state income tax. So I always think it's really important to emphasize this is not a deduction. Deductions reduce the amount of tax that you pay. Credits can actually be used to pay your state taxes. So if someone owes state taxes of $1,000 and they have a $500 tax credit, they can use that as a credit towards their taxes. So it's a great incentive to make that investment into those permanent endowment funds. It is a very popular program, so popular in fact that the tax credits for 2021 are all spoken for, as well as 2022. So gifts that are coming in now are going on the wait list for 2023, which is unfortunate because the further out it gets, it becomes less of a sense of urgency to take advantage of those tax credits. The good news is once a donor receives those tax credits, they can use them for up to 5 years. So they can use them all at once if that is how they want to use them for their tax liability, or they can spread it out over that 5-year time period, or hold on to it if they know they're going to 3 years down the road perhaps have a larger tax liability because they're selling a business or expecting another event to happen in their lives where they'll have a larger tax liability. We are working, our Iowa Council of Foundations is working with their lobbyists to encourage the legislature this year to look at two things. First of all, increasing the amount of tax credits that are available. And second of all, right now there is a limit on how much an individual donor can get. It is very high. A donor can make a $1.2 million gift and receive $300,000 in tax credits. So a couple can receive up to $600,000 in tax credits, provided they're both Iowa taxpayers. We are also going to encourage the legislature to look at lowering that cap, taking it down to about $100,000, which would be equal to about a $400,000 gift. They have done some research and they have found in the previous years, if that cap had been lowered, it really only would have affected about 11 or 12 donors in the state of Iowa and would have freed up quite a bit of tax credit dollars for donors who are on the other end of that spectrum. So those are some things that we are working on to try to expand that Endow Iowa tax credit and allow more people to take advantage of it, also in a little more timely manner. But again, this is a nice incentive. You will find that if you have donors that have given and have gotten these tax credits before, they are definitely interested in getting them again. And in fact, we have several nonprofits that have their own large endowment funds, very large, but will have a smaller endowment with us at the Community Foundation simply for those donors who are insistent that they only want to make their gift if they can make it in a way that gets them the Endow Iowa tax credits. I used to, because it's my alma mater, Wartburg College, and I used to work there. Obviously has a very large endowment on its own. They have an endowment fund that was started by a donor who wanted to take the advantage of the Endow Iowa tax credits, and it is available. So if they have any other donors that know about it and want to make a gift, they can make the gift to the fund through us, still giving to the college, but being able to take advantage of those tax credits. bit about ways to give, ways people can make gifts to your nonprofit agency endowment fund. Again, flyer, ways to give, we're going to touch on a few of those. Obviously cash is there in the center, and that's great. And we love to accept gifts of cash, whether it's from your checking account, piggy bank, buried in the backyard, wherever it may come from. But I also think it's important to remember that for many donors, that's not always their largest available asset. They may have other assets that will allow them to make a more impactful gift. And as we know, with changes in the income tax laws and the increase of the standard deduction for income taxes, cash gifts are not necessarily, don't give people the same tax savings that they did before, especially if they don't itemize. There are other ways of giving that still do provide some tax advantages for them, especially if there's someone who are likely to be charitable. So in addition to cash, I want to talk a little bit about stock gifts. And these are all gifts that we at the Community Foundation accept on a regular basis and are set up to be able to accept from your donors into your nonprofit endowment fund. So for donors that own stock, maybe they worked for a company that gave them stock options while they were employed there, if they have held on to that stock for at least a year and it has appreciated, they can gift that stock directly to the Community Foundation for the benefit of your fund. They avoid paying tax on the gains of that stock. And many times, then they're able to take that tax savings and reinvest it into more stock that will continue to grow their portfolio. Another one I would like to talk about is the IRA charitable rollover, and we actually have a flyer on that specifically on the IRA charitable rollover. When you are working when donors who are 70 and a half and older are eligible, that they can make direct gifts from their IRAs to a charity, and then they don't have to pay taxes on that IRA dollars. So the difference is if they were to take a distribution and then write you a check, then they would have to pay the tax on it because it comes in as their income. This is also where I should probably point out that I am not a tax professional, and that you should always consult someone who is. I know probably just enough to be dangerous, so please, if anyone is considering any of those, please encourage them to talk with someone who is a professional in that area. But again, with the IRA distributions, anyone 70 and a half and older can make those charitable distributions out of an individual retirement account. And for those who are 72 and older and have to start taking the required minimum distributions, these charitable gifts can satisfy some or even all of their required minimum distribution. So if someone is going to be charitable anyway, and they have access to this, it's a really smart way to do it because those are pre-tax dollars that went in, and now they don't have to pay taxes on them to take them out. And they can just gift them and fulfill their charitable goals with those dollars. We also talk about, you see my grain up there. This time of year is a great time to talk about gifts of grain. I just saw 2 or 3 of them come through for us last week. It is where the farmer or the person who the grain is part of their operations takes it to the elevator. If we don't already have an account set up there at the Community Foundation, we can quickly set one up. The grain is gifted to our account. We sell it, take the proceeds, and make the donation into whatever fund that donor intends, and it is a way that now that grain does not have to be included in farm income. So again, another potential tax savings for that person. There's also a flyer in your folder that talks about our Farmland for Good program. This is a program that is specifically if someone wanted to donate farmland to benefit a fund or set up a fund, and they would like that farmland to stay in production for a while. They don't want to see it sold off right away. It's a program that we have that is available. So that is another way for people to give. The other thing we want to talk about is planned giving. So someone making a gift as part of their estate plan is a wonderful way for people to create a legacy that will go on into the future. And we work with people all the time to help them set that up. We just basically put together a document in our office that lays out what their intent is for that estate gift. So when the gift comes to the Community Foundation, it goes into your nonprofit fund to benefit your organization. The other thing that is in your flyer, in your folder, is a planned giving toolkit. And it is a great, great toolkit for if you already have an endowment fund, if any of you have a fund with us or you're thinking about it, it talks about a way to basically have a planned giving program with your donors. and to get them started thinking about remembering your organization in their state. There is estimated that from starting in 2010 through 2060, over $800 billion in Iowa is going to pass from one generation to the next. So if even 5% of that went to our organizations here in the state, you know, that would be over 40 billion that would be available for those organizations. So if you're not talking to your donors about planned giving or giving them the option to do that, you may be missing out on some great opportunities for your organization in the future. All right, let's talk a little bit about how we work with you to market your endowment fund, or how you can market your endowment fund to start with. First of all, it's really important to tell a story. You guys know that you need to tell the story of your organization, the story of what you do, why it's important, the people that it is benefiting, the difference that it's making in your community. And that's no different with an endowment fund. You want to do that, but just letting your donors know that if they want to make a more long-term investment that will benefit your organization into the future, that you have this endowment fund available. And second of all, when you have an endowment fund, talk about it everywhere. It should be mentioned on your website, in your social media, on the newsletters that you send out, on the emails that you send out to your supporters. You definitely want to let them know that that is available. You want to recognize your donors, especially if they have done something to set up a planned gift and have your organization be in their estate planning. Having something like a legacy society is really as simple as saying, we have a legacy society. And these are the people that, you know, we're recognizing because they've let us know that they've included us in their estate planning. It doesn't take a lot to set it up, but it's a great way to recognize the people who have done that. And last of all, utilize us as a partner. We have, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, a lot of resources that we have available for our nonprofit partners to use in marketing their endowment funds. So, when you have an endowment fund, it is really important that once it's established, that it just doesn't kind of sit off to the side and somebody remembers about it maybe once a year when the gift comes in. But you want to think about how can you grow it? Because even though it's going to grow on its own, it's really important to look at it as a tool to continue to grow and work with your donors. So getting your board on board can be a big part of it. So what are some of the ways to get your board on board? First of all, talk about a goal for your endowment. You know, decide where would we like it to be? And let's talk about it regularly. Let's make sure that it's included with the financial reports so the people, your governing boards or your board of directors know what is going on with it. You definitely want to keep them informed through those reports. It's important to talk about a gift acceptance policy. If your organization were to receive an estate gift, for example, with no restrictions on it, just we're leaving you X number of dollars, does your organization have a policy about what you would do with it? Would it all go into your annual budget to be spent that year? Would you set some aside? What would you do with it? An endowment fund can be a great tool to say, you know, gifts that come in, this is our gift acceptance policy. If it's over X number of dollars, a percentage is going to go into our endowment fund. The other percentage will be used for whatever you decide that it's going to be used for. We talked about using permanent endowment and quasi-endowment together as a tool. Lastly, if you can have somebody on your board who's a champion for your endowment fund, that's a big thing too. Someone who's keeping it front of mind, talking about it, making sure that it's part of your appeals, your fundraising practices. It's important to do that. And we definitely want to partner with the organizations. We're happy to come and talk to your board about your endowment fund, ways it can grow, things that can happen with it. So let's talk a little bit about support from the foundation staff. And this is from us. These are the things that we provide as the host foundation at the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa. So we provide administration for your organization, for the fund. We will process the gifts that come in and track them. We send out the acknowledgement letters to the donors. And we definitely can facilitate complex forms of giving. So we can accept those gifts of stock. We can work with attorneys on estate giving and how that will come in and how it will go into your fund. We absolutely will take care of those things. Finance. We have the investment management. In your flyer, in your folder on the right side, you've got some information about our investment performance. You'll see what our performance was for 2020, going back through the past up to 10 years to see what our investment returns have been, some information about the asset allocation for the endowments. You'll also see some information on the total fund composite, how it is invested and put into different types of investment. And then also our investment policy statement that talks about our guidelines and what the goals are for the investment. So all of that is in there for you to take a look at. So you will get quarterly statements, and then we take care of an annual audit that has to happen and any IRS reporting. Lastly, we provide public relations and marketing support for you. So we will create a fund flyer for you, and I've got an example of a fund flyer in here. And it is for, sorry, my nails good, don't want to grab things. The Cerro Gordo County Community Impact Fund. That's the flyer that's in here. We will create one for your organization with your logo, with your colors that look like that, so you can include it in your mailings, have it out at your events, things like that, to let people know about it. We can also help, like we said, with advertisements. If there's something that you want to do, whether it be on social media or another advertisement, we can help create those for you, write press releases. The other thing is all of the funds are on our website, and we have the ability to do online giving. So someone can make an online gift, so you don't have to set that up anywhere. And on your own website, you can link directly to our online giving. So if your donors are looking to give to your endowment fund online, they can find it through your website and get automatically put to ours. Then also in your flyer folder, it also talks about our administrative fees. Yes, there are administrative fees for having a nonprofit endowment fund with us. For a permanent endowment fund, those fees end up being 1.63% annually. So that just comes right out of the fund balance, and that helps us pay for the services that we provide and the work that we do as a community foundation. The other flyer that is in here talks a little bit more about the difference between that quasi-endowed fund and a permanent endowment fund. We talked about how the permanent fund is endowiowa eligible, the quasi is not. Another difference in that is the fees on it. For a permanent endowed fund, the administrative fee is 1.63% per year. For a quasi-endowed fund, it's 2.63 because it's in the market, but it is not necessarily a permanent fund. So there's some information there. Lastly, I want to just talk a little bit about the resources that are available to you as a nonprofit organization that has a fund with us. So again, we want to partner with you. We want you to be as successful as you possibly can be with this fund. So some of the things that we provide are on our website. At this particular site, we have language that we have already written out that you can use in a newsletter, in an email, in a letter to talk about your endowment fund. We have some sample social media posts, so if you want to post something about it. We have graphics that are already set up that talk about endowiowa or philanthropy in general that you can use in your social media. And if you're interested in starting a legacy society and getting some of your supporters either acknowledging the fact that they have let you know that they're giving you an estate gift, or you want to encourage them, we have sample letters that you can use for all of those. For a charter member, a letter to invite people to consider that, and a confirmation letter when someone lets you know that they have made an estate gift to you. So we provide all of these resources for you that you can personalize to your organization and be able to use. So that ends my portion of what I was going to talk about. And I completely realized I forgot, today is National Philanthropy Day. So today is National Philanthropy Day. We're celebrating that. It's actually also part of, last Friday started Community Foundation Week. So I'm really glad to be here as part of that. National Philanthropy Day and Community Foundation Week. So I think what I'm going to do is bring up our panel. If there's anything you want to share a little bit about maybe how it got started or how you use it, we'll go ahead and start with that. And then hopefully that will spur some questions for you. I have some written down if we need them, but I'd love more for the questions to come from you guys to ask them about that. So whoever wants to pick up the microphone and start first. Amanda, can I ask you to do that?
So I'm Amanda Reagan, and I'm the director of the Community Kitchen and Meals on Wheels program. And our mission is to address the long-term and short-term hunger needs in North Iowa. And this has been going on since the 80s. It started when there was a plant closing and a farm crisis. So some of you here probably weren't even born then. So it was a trying time in North Iowa. Group of churches got together, and it went from having these relationships in basements of churches, to the Salvation Army, then now to the facility that we're in at 606 North Monroe. And we certainly couldn't have done without the generosity of the community. We're not tied to any larger nonprofit. We are a standalone. We're actually 2 501c3s, but the Community Kitchen administrates the Meals on Wheels program. So we're pretty lean as far as staffing goes. And when we apply for grants, we really, people want to give items on grants. Very few give to operations. And so for us, operations has always been one of those sources that's a need. But we do have a wide variety of volunteers, and one of those volunteers was Tula Zanius. And Tula was an amazing woman, and she probably could have bought and sold the Community Kitchen a couple of times, but she felt very comfortable in our organization and worked with the people there, and but just had a relationship with the individuals and made them feel welcome and very comfortable. And if any of you knew Tula, I mean, when I say her name, it just brings a smile to my face because she just always was a delight. She was exceedingly helpful in a wide variety of ways. When we had the medical clinic at the Community Kitchen, she was the one that would make sure the people got into it and was sort of the receptionist. And actually, she worked the crowd, you could say, and found people that she thought needed to be there. And Tula was a mother, so she knew how to do that very well. And she would be there at Thanksgiving, and because the world was a party to her, and this was just another place to have social engagement, and she made everybody feel welcome. And that was a really touching part of her. So she is the person that established an endowment for us. And what we've used that money for is for our operations, because it's really important, because in an agency like ours, you don't have the opportunity to write grants for operations or those kind of things. So that's been very helpful, and like I said, she was a special member to our family at the Community Kitchen, and this is a continuing way for her to touch the lives of people there.
So I'm Stacy Dawn with the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce, and I might have to pull in Mr. Coffey to back me up on some of this, but we have a fireworks endowment fund, and that fund came about at a time when we used to collect pop cans as a large portion of the fundraiser for the endowment, and One Vision helped with that, and then when that was no longer a service that they were able to help with, we needed to find a way to continue the fireworks into perpetuity. And so hundreds of very generous donors and volunteers helped raise the funds for our endowment, which now completely fund our fireworks over the lake every 4th of July.
Good, thank you.
I'm Margot Underwood, and I'm the president of the Association for the Preservation of Clear Lake. And the association's purpose is to enhance and protect Clear Lake. We've been established for over 80 years, and we do a lot of partnering in the area with the City of Clear Lake, the City of Ventura, the county, the Clear Project Coordinator, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. So we work in partnership, and our role is more of education, and also we're a financial partner with a lot of the projects that take place to continue to improve the water quality in Clear Lake. Well, having been established for over 80 years, we've had many very generous donors step up over the years to help support the work that we do. But this past year, when I found out a little bit more about the opportunity to establish a quasi-endowment and an endowment fund through the Northeast Iowa Community Foundation, I thought, maybe this is something we should bring to our board of directors and talk about a little bit more, because we would love to be able to continue the work that's been done for the next 80 or 100 years. And we think by providing a source of sustainable funding for the organization, we're going to be able to do that. So with the help of Terry, whom you haven't met yet because she's not here today, but she's the development advisor, we invited her to a board meeting to explain how we would go about setting up these funds. And she met with our board, she met with a small group of us first, and really walked through the steps that Lori walked through with you all today. We got great support from our board of directors, and so this past August, we established these two funds. We established the Endowment Fund, and we established the Quasi Endowment Fund. We're going to be using both of those funds, but the Quasi Endowment Fund we're using for special projects that come up throughout the year. Maybe there's a land acquisition in the watershed that we want to be able to help with. Maybe there's a project that one of our partners brings to us that we want to help financially support. The Quasi-Endowment Fund will allow us to do that. So we're in the growing phase, and Lori mentioned that first you establish your fund, you grow it, and then you're able to grant out. Well, we're in the growing stage. So with the foundation's help, we put together a marketing piece for our funds, and we're sharing that with our members. We're sharing that at any event we do, and we're sharing it in our newsletters. So again, it's the support of the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa that has allowed us to bring this opportunity to our nonprofit. And we think it's just a win-win. And so I hope as you're listening to the stories today that you think about your organization and see how these opportunities can help you grow your organization and help provide a source of sustainable funding for the future. So with that, I'm going to pause and see if we have any questions.
I've got a question.
Great.
So, do you recommend that organizations that start the fund funnel all their fundraising towards the endowment in order to build those funds bigger, or is it just a tool that's in the toolkit? And
I would say, and if anybody else wants to jump in, I would say it's a tool that's in a toolkit, because as a nonprofit organization, you still need your annual gifts. And we would never encourage, an organization to not continue to do their annual campaigns, the annual fundraising that they have to do. But it is a tool to be able to say, especially when you have longtime donors who have shown their support over the years, obviously believe in your mission, believe in the work that you're doing. Those are great people to talk about maybe a larger, more impactful gift to your endowment fund to help continue that, to say, you have been faithfully giving for the past however many years. A gift to the endowment fund will make sure that you continue to give long after you are no longer with us. So it really should be a tool that you use in concert with your annual campaigns. You guys want to share on that, or? Yes.
So can you clarify the benefit of the quasi fund as opposed to just having it be cash, or your annual giving?
Mm-hmm. I would say a quasi fund, and since you guys have one, if you want to jump in too, obviously you need to have funds that are coming in, that are going to go right back out in that same year. A quasi is probably a good one to take in place of like a reserve fund. Some organizations will have like funds that they set aside maybe, or put in CDs or some other vehicle to try to, because they know they're going to hold on to them for a little bit. They're saving it for a project that's coming up. That's a great way to use a quasi, because you have access to the principal and to a larger amount of it to come out. Share.
The other reason that I would also underscore is that the quasi-endowment fund is also growing with a larger pool of investments. So instead of not getting any interest for your funds, we are getting the result of having those funds invested, and they're growing. And so with continual gifts, those funds in the Quasi Fund continue to grow and help support the mission of your organization.
Tim,
Could I supplement a little bit what Stacy was talking about?
please.
In 2014, the Clear Lake Chamber made a decision to have a community-wide fundraising campaign to make sure the community had fireworks. And of all things, fireworks, but the story behind the fireworks is, depending upon the year and certainly the weather, the week of the 4th of July can attract tens of thousands of people to Clear Lake, and that has economic ramifications. And we wanted to make sure that at least the fireworks could be that turning wheel to ensure that the crowds would come. So we established a $1 million goal, and when we met that, we increased it to 1.2. And the thing that attracted us to the Community Foundation when we made a decision to have a permanent fund there was we looked back at the investment part of the Community Foundation in Northeast Iowa. And during, the rough years of 2009, 2010, they had an incredible rate of return during those difficult years of, I think it was around 9 or 10%. And so that demonstrated some real professional stability. And we could also add to the fund, too. So it really worked out well, and it completely pays for the fireworks. Now, I think we're up to about 1.3 or 1.4 million with the growth. So it's an incredible experience and something to have if your organization is looking at that.
Yes.
Have you done any research on the viability of nonprofit organizations that have endowments versus those without endowments?
Oh, that's I don't know of any. I apologize. I don't know of any, but I do know that I remember we were doing another presentation and we were trying to put out there kind of what's a recommendation. So we just, and this is, Google research. So I'm talking about kind of like best practices as far as, what was a recommended amount that an organization should have income from endowment, as part of their annual budget. And I know what we found was that a recommendation was to say that a good best practice would be if an organization could say that 10% of their annual budget income came from endowment. So it's just, again, anything that's endowment is less that you have to fundraise, is less that you have to count on from grant, maybe one less grant you have to write. It may cover, a decrease in, an allocation, from the government or something like that.
Thanks.
Are the investment earnings the same for both funds?
Yes, both quasi and permanent endowment are in the same investment pool. So yes, the rate of return is the same for both. And that is the way that works is we work with an investment management firm out of Chicago. It's called Marquette Associates, and they are our investment management firm. But so we have that professional management, but they are advised by, we have an investment committee that is made up of professional advisors, attorneys, financial planners, accountants, things like that, in the Blackhawk County area. And then they meet quarterly with the manager from Marquette, and they actually make recommendations. He comes in and makes recommendations on changing allocations based on what he thinks the market is going to do, balancing it out to make sure that we have the growth that we're looking for, but also, that we're protecting and, we want growth, but we also want to make sure that we're not taking, unreasonable chances with these funds. So those two working together, the professional management and the local control, we think is a great balance to make sure that we manage the endowment fund well. Yes?
Can having this fund take the place from having a foundation?
I think it possibly could. We talk about, this is kind of outside of this realm, but sometimes we work with donors who are thinking about doing a family, setting up like a private foundation or something like that. The nice thing is if they instead decide to do a fund with us, then we take care of, like you said, the reporting to the IRS, the auditing, so you don't have attorney's fees to do those types of things. You don't necessarily, have to, have the the marketing or anything like that, that all comes under what we work with.
Is for the quasi and then your regular fund, same admin fee for that?
No, the quasi fund is a 1% higher per year, so that's a 2.63, and the permanent endowment is a 1.63 annual
And
fee.
then my second question, I know that was a state tax credit. Anything for federal?
You still, for example, if you get the 25% tax credit, the other 75% of the gift is still federally deductible as any other gift would be, depending on if you itemize or not. Yeah, they won't let you double dip on that. Yes?
What was the minimum you said for the endowiowa tax credit? How much do people have to give? Is there a minimum?
There's no minimum for how much they have to give. Our standard there is gifts over $100 are what we send out the form to donors to fill out. But if someone, makes a $25 gift to an endowment fund and they call us and request the form to get the 25% of that, we'll certainly help them get that done. I would be curious, Ms. Ruth, if any of you want to share maybe some of the benefits of working with the Community Foundation, maybe that you have found?
I'd be happy to start. It's just been a tremendous experience to have the expertise of Terry and Lori. They work very seamlessly, and the marketing department, they all work together extremely well. One of the things that I've identified with these two funds is, we don't have to do any of the acknowledgments. That's all taken care of for us through the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa. So all the record keeping, all of the letters going back to the donors, while we certainly thank the donors individually, but all of the other work is done through the Community Foundation. It takes a burden off of the nonprofit. It allows you to do your mission and do it to the best of your ability, not to have to worry about all that other record keeping, and they are an amazing team. Again, the marketing expertise that they are providing to us is so extremely helpful. Having these handouts, having the ability to donate online, it really speeds up the process. Donors appreciate it. You present your organization in a very professional way to donors because of the partnership that we have with the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa. So we're just sold on it.
That was exactly what came to my mind in terms of administration. They handle all of the donor communication on the back end of the donation, so that's very helpful. We're also a 501c6 organization, so our Community Foundation Endowment Fund allows people to give gifts that are tax deductible, which otherwise they wouldn't be able to do if they were donating to a 501c6.
I think when you talk about any of the nonprofits here, especially, you're running pretty lean, and so anytime you can get the services that you get with this, it's really an advantage. So I would say, it's, small as operations as we are, it's really a plus to have someone like that taking care of all those details.
And another thing I will add, I talk about myself as a service, but that Terry and I are both willing to do with the organizations we work with is many times an organization, doesn't have devoted development staff. So maybe there's a donor who does express an interest in making a large gift or putting your organization, in their will, and you're not quite sure, or you think they might be interested, but you're not. But everybody's scared to talk to somebody about what might happen after they die with their money. Terry and I are happy to go and have those conversations with your prospective planned giving donors or major donors to the endowment and explain how the endowment works, how it will benefit your organization in the future. So we are certainly happy to, to help you with those conversations as well. Any other questions? Let's try to see if I had anything else written down. Did you guys find any obstacles to getting started with your fund that had to kind of overcome or?
When we started our Ignite Clear Lake fireworks campaign, I think our campaign was one of the first campaigns that the foundation, Community Foundation, was willing to work with. So we were kind of the test baby for a lot of what you do today. But they took a lot of the burden off of us, and the only burden that we had was communicating to prospective donors that you really need to channel your gift to the foundation because of the tax exemption, and we're not tax exempt. So many of the donors thought we were tax exempt, and we had to do a little bit of education there.
I have a question, but
Yes.
it may be more of a tax thing. Because of the 501c3, do cities ever open up endowments for?
Yeah, we do. I know we hold, I think I mentioned a few people, I live in Waverly. They have an endowment specifically for the leisure services department, like the Parks and Rec at Waverly. So yes, cities will do that. We hold endowments for fire departments that benefit, police forces, things like that. So yeah, we definitely have cities.
I know Mason City had they probably still have one now, a grant administrator at one point. And I'm thinking, well, I wonder if they have an endowment section because there's so many different departments within the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I'm not sure about. I don't know if we have one listed for them. And we can also work with, organizations that are not 501c3, like Stacey, mentioned. The gifts are actually, the reason they're tax deductible for an endowment fund like that is because when the donor makes the gift, they are technically making the gift to the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa, and we are a 501c3, so that's why it enjoys all that tax deductibility. But then when we set up the fund agreement with an organization that is not a 501c3, we have to put in some parameters because we, as the organization that accepted the gift, have to do the due diligence and are responsible for making sure that the fund is benefiting a charitable purpose. So that is how that works.
Lori, do you want to touch a little bit on if the nonprofit is no longer functional, what happens to the endowments or the quasi-endowment?
Yeah. At that point, like we talked about, our board of directors bears what we call the burden, and they have something called variance power, and that allows them to be able to make changes to original fund agreements. So it might be that if the organization doesn't exist anymore, that we have to find another organization that maybe is serving that same purpose in the area or a similar purpose. Sometimes it will be that we will decide to kind of hang on to it because maybe we think an organization might come back. There was Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Northeast Iowa that went out a few years ago and had an endowment fund with us and kind of made the decision that we were going to benefit some other mentoring programs in the meantime, but with the caveat that if Big Brothers Big Sisters comes back into that area, that we would revert that fund back to them. So we want to make sure that we're honoring the intent of those donors, because when your donors make a gift, they're making a gift to do your specific work. So that's why it's really important that if for some reason you're not there to do the work, we still want to honor the intent of those donors and make sure that their gifts continue to benefit that type of work in the area. Yes?
So do you own the funds on our behalf, basically?
Yes, the gifts that come in are gifts to the Community Foundation. They become our assets, but that fund agreement outlines the fact that we are going to use those funds for the intent of that fund agreement to benefit the organization.